friends, welcome back to another episode of the Field and Garden Podcast. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler. And friend, if this is your first time dropping in, I want to send out to you a really special welcome. I'm really glad that you're here. I know how precious our time is, and the fact that you chose to drop in here is really meaningful to me, and I want to thank you for that. So today I have I'm going to really be sharing about one of the first lessons that I ever learned about in gardening and farming that has impacted my entire career as a flower farmer. But before we jump into that, I just want to remind you that this podcast is made possible by thegardenersworkshop.com, where you will find what you need to equip yourself in education, in tools, supplies to grow amazing cut flowers, whether you are a budding flower farmer or a beginning gardener that just wants to grow a few cut flowers, up to the person that wants to scale and grow their flower farming business. Friends, we have an amazing platform ready and waiting for you, full of free and paid resources. So please remember to drop in when that need arises, as well as you can sign up for our farm newsletter, which will keep you in the loop, as well as point out to you some of our resources in a timely manner, tips of the season, you might say. And so we hope you'll drop in over there. So I'm calling this episode a golden opportunity. And it's really about, if you've followed along with me at all or read any of my books, I've written and talked extensively about my use of leaves. And that was based on that very first lesson that I learned about how leaves and leaf mold have really created this place that I farm, and long before I got there. And I just wanted to offer up some suggestions today, especially for those of you that maybe don't understand how to use leaves. They're more of a nuisance, and they used to be that way for me too until I actually knew how to make the best use out of them. And that's kind of what I want to fix. And I'm doing something a little different today because as I was researching to do this podcast, I came across some great information that I've already provided, and I thought it might be a great way to spark your interest. So I want to read a couple of excerpts out of my book, Vegetables Love Flowers, which, is really a book not about vegetables, y'all. It's about why vegetables love and benefit from being in the presence of flowers. And this book is really about my gardening, all-natural philosophy, and leaf mold is really at the heart of this. So this is the first thing I want to just touch on for just a minute. So I'm actually reading, I think they call this the introduction. It is. It's on page 12, and I'm going to read some short excerpts here. So another part of my story that started to come into focus at this time had to do with my garden soil. There was something really very special about it. Everything I planted grew really well in spite of my lack of know-how. I thought it must be its history of being treated as a garden for so long before I arrived here. And then I found the stacks. And then I'm going to skip down. That's the day the tide began to turn on my gardening point of view. I cannot guess how many empty bags lay there as evidence on how much leaf mold had been made and turned into the garden soil I now worked. I was perplexed over these findings. The soil eats leaf mold? ? Does that mean it's alive ? Was this the reason that garden produced abundance so easy ? And what had it had to eat since Grandpa's gardening days? Friends, it was like when Steve and I discovered these gobs of empty leaf bags that Grandpa had brought home and made all this leaf mold. It's like in my mind, all of these puzzle pieces started kind of fitting together. And I just don't want you to miss the opportunity that is literally fallen from the trees out there. And it's just been such a key piece of my journey, kind of like my story of discovering farming, right? It's like most people that haven't been exposed to the good side of farming look at it like just hard work, right? Well, I find that people look at leaves like that also. They haven't seen that wonderful side and all of the benefits from that. So the other thing that I want to do is I went in to my blogs that are on our website under the free resources, and I knew that I had written a blog many years ago called Garden Gold, and I went back to read that to kind of like make sure I didn't skip over telling you something, and I thought, oh my gosh, I am going to read this blog and hopefully also point out to you there is a lot of great information, free resources over on our website. So this is under free resources, and you just go to the blog and you can search Garden Gold if you want to see the great images that are over there. There's one of my sister laying on the back of the pickup truck on a big pile of leaf bags as she was packing it. But here we go, and I want to share this blog with you. So there is no more welcoming time of the year in the garden than when all the garden gold starts piling up around here. What am I talking about? Bags of leaves, of course. For the next couple of months, we gather and put down leaves on the farm like crazy. You might say they are our secret sauce. This annual chore of collecting leaves in the fall and winter is labor intensive for a few weeks, but our gardens will reap the benefits for years to come. I have over 12,000 square feet of native tree, shrub, and perennial border, plus our fall-planted cool flower gardens to mulch. We gather hundreds of bags of leaves. We go out weekly with a couple of trucks and helping hands to collect bagged leaves from curbside that have been put out for the trash collection. In parentheses, ugh, can you imagine? We don't have to go more than 1 or 2 miles from my urban farm to get our fill. We mulch the pathways and that native border 12 inches or more deep, making it virtually impossible for weed seeds to sprout. Weed suppression is the most obvious advantage, but there are even more benefits that are vital to the organic function and low maintenance of our farm. They build soil structure, provide moisture retention, and keep the soil cool in summer. This is how leaves work for the good of the farm. The goal is to mulch pathways as soon after making beds or disturbing the soil as possible to prevent weeds from getting a start. We only use bagged leaves. They are so easy to drag and carry to where you need them. For your information, this also rescues them from the landfill. Bagged leaves cannot be composted by most cities. Mulch deeply to prevent having to top off mulch later in the season, off script, which would never happen around here. We just never get to go back and redo stuff. Leaves are free and usually available in abundance. Don't skimp. Beds are planted and harvested throughout the season as usual with no maintenance needed in pathways. And this is a huge benefit, y'all. Flower and vegetables are stripped of excess foliage while harvesting, dropping that greenery into the pathways. All season, we are walking on this amazing organic lasagna we're creating, breaking down the leaves and basically pulverizing it all as we work. Permanent garden pathways get additional leaves each fall to refurbish what has broken down. This practice has built our soil into what it is today. The very best part of it all of this for me is walking my little flower farm in winter and spring, admiring these beautiful pathways, knowing what the leaves offer and that life they bring to my garden. Other benefits of all this organic mulch: when your soil is covered and insulated with organic mulch, it brings the earthworms and billions of microbes closer to the soil surface to work. All winter, while you watch from the window, there is so much work going on out there beneath that blanket of leaves. So go ahead and rescue a few bags of leaves, but don't come in my neighborhood. We might have to launch a new reality show, Bag Wars. All right, friends, so that's the end of the blog. And so that's over on the free resources. You can find it over there if you want to reread or reference anything I just went through there. So how can you make bags of leaves a better part of your farm and garden? So for us, the common questions that I get is, number one, I'll reiterate again, the reason we only take bagged leaves, that's what makes this so easy, y'all. First off, they're easy to throw into the truck, and then when we bring them home, we throw them off the truck in the area of where we're going to use them, and literally we can grab and drag usually 2 bags at a time down the pathways or to wherever we're going to take them to, versus if you have loose leaves, which people try to convince us all the time to come get those. That is so labor intensive. And so I've just drawn a line in the sand, and we do not accept those. We can't manage those. Here on the farm, if we collect our own leaves, yes, we do that, but we don't bring home loose leaves. So we only bring home those bagged leaves. And as I mentioned, most municipalities that collect leaves don't have a way to compost. If they have a composting facility, those leaves that are bagged, they actually get put into the landfill. So we really feel like we're doing a service to the environment, to our neighborhoods, to our city, and to everything involved, right? And the next thing that I often get asked is, don't I worry about chemicals and about bringing home those types of things, or insects? And so first off, as a general rule, we are not stopping at homes to collect bags of leaves that have been put out for trash collection from those yards that is really obvious that they're being treated with chemicals. Their lawns are weed-free, and they're very, very green year round. That's a lawn that's very chemical dependent. And we just don't stop at those houses. Houses that we stop at are houses that look like mine. They have a lot of trees in their yard. Their lawn is basically made up of whatever grows, what most people call weeds. And you're fairly assured that there's not chemicals, but you can't let the fear of a chemical stop you from making use of these resources. You just have to use good common sense, like picking the yard you take it from, and just go from there. And after doing this for 3 decades now, and when I say that we have brought home tens of thousands of bags of leaves, we have not had any obvious problems that we know of, right? And then people often say 2 things. They're worried about bringing pests home. I personally find that more beneficial insects live in leaf litter than pests live in leaf litter. So you're actually maybe giving a ride to your farm, some good guys, ground beetles and all those kinds of guys into your farm. So you're bringing home more good stuff than you are bad stuff. And one of the really common fears that people have in the insect department are slugs. And we find that, if you just look at our social media posts, and you see our garden images, you see just how many leaves we have in our garden, and we just don't suffer from slug damage. We feel like the beneficial insects, when it all balances out, there's more good bugs that are predators of slugs and those types of bugs. Now, it may take you, if you're just starting out, or if you've been very chemical dependent, you may find that it'll take a time for that to balance out, but we just don't find it to be a problem. So we don't worry, we don't allow chemical fears, pest fears prevent us from embracing this incredible resource, right? And then, so how do we do it? So we go around, literally, as I mentioned, in these trucks, a couple of pickup trucks with a couple of people in each one. It definitely takes help because some bags can be really heavy. I have been certainly known to go out by myself. That was one of the reasons that I got the newer pickup truck that I have, because it has one of those pull-out tailgate steps. And I found that allowed me to go pick up bags of leaves more alone, because I can't get in and out of the truck as easily as I used to be able to. So we go out with these trucks. Literally, we don't even have to go more than a half a mile from my farm now. There's so many people that put out their bags. And we go out, we collect bags of leaves, we pile them high, and then we come home and then drop them and dump them bags where they're going to be actually applied. And normally, for us in our situation, we'll usually bring them home on this work day, and then on the next work day, which is a couple days later after everybody's recovered from that, then we put them all down. And that just works really, really well. And when we put them down, no, we do not chip them or chop them. That surely would be beneficial, but that is incredibly labor intensive. And we have just found it to not be necessary. So we then drag the bags down our narrow pathways. And that's another reason it's so great to have them in the bags. You can drag, if they're light bags, I can carry one in front of me and drag the other one behind me and take 2 bags at a time down the rows. We use our sod knife cutter to split the bags open quickly. You know, people have often asked me about recycling those bags. There currently is not a recycling program for dirty plastic that I know of, because these bags are filthy inside. And it would be totally prohibitive to be able to do this if you said I was only going to do it if I recycled the plastic. You are saving the landfill so much mass of product from having it in the landfill by emptying those bags before they go back to the trash, right? So I carry 2 bags down, I split the bags open with the sod knife, dump them, and we dump the bags in a pile as we're doing this, and within no time, the whole garden is mulched. Our goal is to mulch about 10 to 12 inches deep. People often ask also, what about the leaves blowing away? A few of the leaves do blow away, but we're stomping the leaves as we're going up and down the pathways, dumping. And then, of course, for the fall garden, even the very early spring, most often, we're hooping and covering those beds just to protect from wind. And having those low structures in the garden helps to prevent that. But very little of the leaves actually blow away. So we dump them, and then once the pathways are complete, and if you want to imagine if you were looking down on my garden, like from the vision of the view of a drone, if you were standing in the middle of my garden, 100 feet up looking, all the pathways are mulched deeply, then there would be a frame around the pathways or around the garden of like the width of a pathway, like 24 inches or so of leaves, really deep. And that kind of gives us an edge to mow up to or to weed eat on. That really just helps to outcompete those weed seeds from germinating. Now, leaves, just like any other type of mulch, does not stop perennial weeds potentially from sprouting and growing up through it. We fight nutgrass and Bermuda grass, those perennial weeds that regrow from rhizomes and roots. And, leaves have to be incredibly deep to outcompete them as mulch would. That's why we don't use landscape fabric. It does not stop perennial weeds. So the leaves, really their use for us is to prevent annual weed seeds from sprouting and to build our soil. So we mulch these pathways and they go through winter, right? Then next spring, when we start harvesting cool flowers and stripping all those flowers in the garden, we're creating that lasagna I mentioned in the blog. And it's like you're adding that green, fresh stuff to the brown carbon stuff, and then you're stomping on it all season long. I mean, we harvest constantly, right? And then what happens is you realize you're pulverizing that stuff, and it's just breaking down, and the microbes in the soil are digesting it. And so because I practice a conventional method of farming, which means at the end of that cool flower season, that garden is completely tilled, biodegradable film, leaf debris that's pulverized, and plant matter that's been mowed, and all of that feeds our soil. And then we build another garden because I have the equipment to do that with. And I used to do that by hand, y'all, for years, and that's what just created this amazing soil that I have. So, friends, collecting these bags of leaves and using them in our garden in a very manageable, realistic labor way has just really created this amazing soil that we have here. And in addition, we try to bring home enough leaves to make leaf mold to use in other ways in our garden. And so in my book, Vegetables Love Flowers, on page 154, it shows a picture of the leaf mold cages that we make and how we actually do that. And this year, for the first year in many years, we've actually got a couple of leaf mold cages going. And these are like compost cages that we just leave alone. We don't work them. We don't turn them. We just know that at the end of not next spring, 1 year from this coming spring, that leaf mold will be amazing and ready to use. We'll add leaves throughout the winter this year as it compresses and breaks down, and then we just let it sit next year. We don't add new stuff to it because we want to have a finished product spring in a year. And when you do it in cages, it allows you to confine the leaves in a smaller space than if you just have this huge pile that just kind of mushes down and spreads out. And so leaves are a golden opportunity. And, you know, it's just become a really big part of my farm, and we love using them, and I hope it helps you. So I've tried to answer many of the questions that we get about leaves and to share the power of leaves. If you have any question about how amazing the power of leaves are, there's a lot of great information out there, but you could just look to the floor of the forest. You know, that's why those deep forests are so very rich in flora, because the leaves just fall and the pine needles and things just have that natural process that we're trying to duplicate and replicate in our gardens. And you can do that. It can be simple because, friends, when we make it complicated, as we are so great at doing, it makes it impossible. And Steve's grandpa's example, which I talk about that story in the introduction to Vegetables Love Flowers. You know, back in the days when they did everything so simply, we look back now and realize just how smart they were, and we have just complicated things so much that we just need to get back to basics. And leaf molds and leaves in your garden are really a great way to start off in a garden. So, friends, I just want to say, if you're a newbie here, I'm glad you stuck around to the end, and I hope to meet you again right here on the Field and Garden podcast and over at thegardenersworkshop.com. Till we meet again, friends. Ciao.